Welcome, everybody. Uh, this is the third edition of the Dappnode Crash Course, and we're going to go over how to set up Dappnode pretty much from scratch using your own hardware. So there are a number of questions that arise during this process. I don't know if any of you have had the experience of trying it out in the past or just any kind of general troubleshooting with Dappnode. So the idea of these crash courses is that if anything should go wrong during the process, we can all be here together to learn how to better deal with these kinds of obstacles in your Dappnode journey. We're going to be doing these, and if you have any suggestions for the future or any crash courses that you would like us to go over, please let us know, and we can definitely make it happen. If there are any questions during the process, please feel free to either unmute your mic or type your question in the chat. Let's start by the basics. What is Dappnode? Dappnode is free open source software that allows anyone with no technical background to run their own nodes for either friends and family or their local networks. The idea is that Dappnode makes it super, super easy to run your own nodes. Far from the very intimidating and highly technical process that some people might be expecting. The mission of Dappnode is to make it pretty much user-friendly for any kind of user, not only technical users. So Dappnode comes in two flavors. It has Dappnode Home, which are plug-and-play hardware that we sell. So this is even an easier way for people with no technical experience. Or you can also have your own hardware and download the latest version of Dappnode Core, install it from that. So for today's crash course, we're going to go the DIY way. We're going to download this version of the latest version of Core. We're going to configure it to be bootable on a USB so that we can install it. Okay, so let's start with the minimum specs that you'll need in your hardware. So let's take the Dappnode Home hardwares and devices as a reference. So let's say that we go with the smallest Dappnode, which is the Hopper node. We have an Intel NUC i7 processor. So even if you go with an i3 or an i5, you're going to have no issues. Regarding RAM, 32 is just great. Like I've made some tests myself running Dappnode with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And I mean, if you want to talk about minimum specs, I think that 16 is pretty good, is pretty decent, but also doesn't take you very far. So if you're looking into running one mainnet node or one Gnosis chain node, and you want to go with 16 gigs of RAM, you'll be okay with that. Some of our equipments go up to 64. So I would say that 64 is if you want to run many nodes of different kinds, if you want to run I don't know, at least 3 to 4 different blockchains and keep them all in sync. I think that 64 RAM would be the right path for you. Storage. This is a very, very common question. It's also a close answer to the rest of them. It depends on how far you want to take your Dappnode. So if you want to just sync an Ethereum mainnet node, the lightest client so far, if I'm not mistaken, is Geth, and it'll take you 1.3 terabytes, plus what the consensus client will take, which is approximately 400 gigs, also if I'm not mistaken. This would give us a total of 1.5 terabyte. With this, you still have some room, and also, to be honest, clients have been getting pretty good, especially Nethermind. They have been getting very, very good at pruning. So if you don't know what pruning is, let's say that when you have your own node and copy of the blockchain, there are ways in which you can trim out like some extra information and just keep like some of the headers. These are called. So what this makes possible is that you can still verify the blockchain with your running your full node, but you don't need to store the whole copy. So this process is called pruning, and this has been getting very, very good, especially for devices that have limited storage. So I would say if it comes to minimum specs, I would say that 2 terabytes are really good. Again, if you want to really like test the boundaries of your Dappnode and run as many clients as possible, Dappnode is compatible with something called LVM, which allows you to, let's say, like combine different storage devices in one same partition. So you can have like a 4 terabyte NVMe and then add a 2 terabyte SSD. Just make sure it's fast enough. This will take a significant amount of read and writing speed, which for NVMe is good, but not for all SSDs. So yeah. So long story short, if you wanna even like go further than 4 terabytes, you can do it. Just make sure that you use compatible hardware, and yeah, you can have your Dappnode running for many, many years, hopefully. Let's move on to, okay, so let's actually start building the USB flash drive that we're gonna need to boot our Dappnode software from. So for this, we're gonna need software called Balena Etcher. So it is a very, very simple tool. This is pretty much the interface. You'll have to download it. It's available for major operating systems. And what this does is it lets you select an ISO file and then select a USB thumb drive. So where do we get this image from? The easiest, I would say, is go back to the Dappnode website, and if you go here to the option of home or core, you can install it from here. Or also, if you go to the GitHub repo, you'll also be able to find the latest releases here. So let's go to Dappnode. And if we go to releases, our latest one is 0.2.75. Before we go on, let's mark a very, very important difference here in this step. There are also 2 types of releases in every Dappnode version. You'll have the regular attended version, which is this one, or you'll have the unattended version. What does this mean? The unattended version, I would say if you are a new user with no experience in installing Linux and stuff like that, like more advanced stuff, I would say go for the unattended version. Because the unattended version, what will do for you is that you will just plug the USB in, and literally you don't even have to do a single click, or you don't even have you don't even need to have a keyboard plugged in, because the unattended installation will just go default on everything and just proceed to install Dappnode. So if you are a more experienced user, or you're kind of picky with configuration, and I don't know, you have installed different versions of Linux before, you'd like to choose your partition type and configure your partitions and all of that, then I would say go for the attended version. The attended version is not that difficult either. If you're aware of the general concepts of what installing an operating system is, it is also pretty intuitive. It's not about just clicking next and next, but even if you did so, the attended installation will also include default selected options. So you could even plug in the keyboard and just press enter in every step, and it'll go the same way as the unattended version. So I hope the difference between the unattended version and the attended version is clear. If not, long story short as well, unattended is for non-technical users, and the attended version is for users that have experience installing operating systems. So, okay, this is our interface. This is our Balena Etcher software. So we're going to flash from file, or you can also flash it from a URL directly if you prefer. So I'm going to select 2.73. It's the latest one that I have. And I'm going to select as target the drive that I mentioned that is 32 gigs. And I'll click on Flash. It's going to ask me for my password. And there we go. So after this, we take this USB flash drive and plug it into a device. Most of the time it will automatically boot from the USB as soon as it detects that it's a bootable device. However, you may come across some devices that don't have this option as default. If this is the case for you, I would recommend you to go into your BIOS configuration and change the boot order from there. So now we're going to plug this USB, and if it boots directly from the USB, it'll take care of the process for you, and you'll just need to watch out for when your device reboots. So after it reboots with the unattended version, it should be already configured and set as with like default options. So the next step would be to connect and access to our Dappnode for the first time. The easiest way to connect to your Dappnode would be to look for your Wi-Fi networks and scan them. You should be able to see a Dappnode Wi-Fi new network. So the easiest way is to connect to that Wi-Fi. I would say that by far is the best access method to your Dappnode. However, the ideal access method to your Dappnode would be through VPN. Even if we access via Wi-Fi to our Dappnode, ideally would be configuring VPN as a longer-term solution. So this is the first time that you are accessing your Dappnode. So just doing a quick recap, the optimal way to access this menu for the first time is to connect to the Dappnode's Wi-Fi and use the default credentials and go to my.dappnode. So if you're accessing your Dappnode for the first time, this will be the first window that you'll see. In case you have trouble accessing my.dappnode, you can always try dappnode.local. However, the local proxy is only meant to be used for initial configuration purposes. And some people stick with dappnode.local, and then later on they have issues. It's like, hey, I can't access the interface or whatever. This is because dappnode.local will give you limited configuration options. So what you should actually be using is my.dappnode, which is accessible through either the Wi-Fi network or the VPN connection. There are two credentials that you'll be able to set at this point. One is the username. So let's say that the username is Dappnode test, and we'll set a pretty simple password. And with this password, this is the second kind of security credentials that we'll deal with today. This is a recovery token. So let's say that you forget your user account and you need to recover access to your Dappnode. This recovery token will help you achieve that. So it's like a seed phrase, kind of. Anybody that has access to this recovery token can have access to change your user settings or to do like a recovery. So we highly recommend to store this in a safe place. We have the Dappnode test, and we set Dappnode1 as our username. Some settings require your attention. Let's go ahead, click start. And let's say that we want to configure a full node, like from scratch. So we'll go and pick full node, and we'll pick our clients as well. So let's pick for today's purposes, Nethermind and Lighthouse. We want to make sure that these checkpoint syncs are always turned on when selecting a new consensus client. Why? Because this is the difference between taking 5 to 10 minutes to sync or taking days. So if you want to quickly sync your node, make sure this checkpoint sync option is always enabled. So We're going to click next. We're going to enable auto updates. Well, I'll disable them for now, just to not have any issues during the example. And this is what we should be seeing if we're accessing this for the first time. So as you notice, one of the first recommendations is to change the Wi-Fi credentials. So let's go ahead and set up our VPN as a first step. Right now I have OpenVPN as an option, but WireGuard is much, much faster and efficient in general. It's just like it runs more stable. You can add a device for, let's say that I want to run this on my Dappnode phone profile. And then I'll add this device and get different VPN credentials for each of these. So at this point, you probably want to download WireGuard client so that you can enter these credentials and set them up in your client. So you can either download the configuration or copy the profile and add it manually. Or if you're on your phone, you can also import it with a QR code, which is quick and super simple. So once we do this, once we have a working VPN profile and we have connected to it from our local client, we can move on to Wi-Fi. And you can either change credentials, or my recommendation would be to turn it off, like fully. And this is much more secure because instead of it being displayed if anyone performs a network scan, you can just have remote access through VPN. So I think this works much better. And if I refresh this page, so the change your Wi-Fi credentials alert change here, we see that Nethermind is already installed, Lighthouse just finished, and this is going to start syncing with the default options. At this point, Lighthouse is synced. As I mentioned, like it took us like 5 minutes. And once we have a consensus client synced, that's when our execution client starts syncing. So in the case of Geth, it's really cool because the progress bar works, but Nethermind is kind of tricky in the dashboard because sometimes this hangs for like days and days, and people think that their Nethermind client isn't syncing. But this isn't the case. Like if, first of all, CPU is going crazy. There is some syncing activity on one of the clients. So this is a first signal to know that everything is working as expected at this point. But let's say that the CPU is regular and we don't see like anything. So then we go to packages, we go to Nethermind. And here we will go to the logs. And we can see that it's running pretty smooth. Yeah, we have like some percentage progress here. You know, so it's getting there. Let's take one more extra step and check out the stakers menu, which I personally love because it's pretty self-explanatory. You can stake in these 3 different chains so far. You can stake in Ethereum mainnet, Gnosis chain, or Prater, which is early testnet. If this thing is something that you're experiencing from time to time, or also if you go to the Dapp store and sometimes it hangs or it doesn't load or install your packages properly, you can always go to repository, go to IPFS, and instead of using your local IPFS, you can switch to remote. So this is another big tip. If you're experiencing troubleshooting while installing any packages or loading menus, remember that Dappnode is not only free open source software, but it's also based in public and decentralized infrastructure. So Ethereum and IPFS are kind of, you know, like big deals for Dappnode to run correctly. So if we go to the stickers menu, there we go. We didn't even have a loading screen because with the remote IPFS repository, it was super quick. As I was saying, the stickers menu is pretty self-explanatory. To run a node, you'll need 2 clients, one execution client and another consensus client. You can pick them from here. So for this, we picked Nethermind and we picked Lighthouse. But let's say that for some reason you say there are some issues with my consensus client and I need to switch it. So what I love about the stakers menu is how easy it makes it. Let's just switch to Nimbus. So we are going to select Nimbus and use checksync. This is very important, as I said. This is the difference between 5 minutes and days of waiting. I will apply changes, and let's go to the dashboard and wait until Dappnode and the stakers menu switch our clients automatically. The cool thing is that there are a number of configurations between, the consensus client and the execution client so that they can talk to each other. But all of this is taken care of by the stakers menu. So this is what makes it a great tool. Let's go to packages, and we'll see that Lighthouse was stopped because the stakers menu just put it out of work. And Nimbus is running, but just as we saw when we first picked Lighthouse, we're seeing an error. So let's go to the Nimbus logs and check it out from there to see if we are indeed syncing. If we go to the dashboard, we'll notice that we are almost there. And there we go. Nimbus is successfully synced. So that's how easy it is to change your consensus client if you're experimenting any troubleshooting. Nimbus is already synced. Nethermind should be already up and working again. If we go to configuration and we go to advanced configuration, we'll see that the stakers menu already pointed at Nimbus as its consensus client. Syncing is still happening in Nethermind. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you get Dappnode installed on your own hardware and start syncing your first nodes. Let's say that you want to also sync Gnosis chain. So let's pick Nethermind and let's pick Lodestar. Let's use checksync. And the Web3 signer is if you're interested in running a validator. So let's say that we want to run a Gnosis validator. We'll make sure to include the Web3 signer in our options. We are going to set up a default fee recipient. And after this, we will apply changes. And yeah, just as mainnet, it'll start configuring everything for us. And if you're interested in running any other nodes that you can see in the stakers menu, you can go to the Dapp store, and there are a number of really, really cool options here. You can run a Hopper node, Near, Optimism, Avalanche node, like even a Bitcoin node is like super easy. You just like do a couple of clicks and it'll start syncing right away. So yeah, thanks again for being here. And I hope you have a great weekend.